What's up, everybody? My name's Dom Palombi. Good to have you here. Welcome to the DomCast. This is our very first episode where we talk about music, drums, stream stuff, and all sorts of kinds of galores. And today I have three awesome friends, dear friends of mine, that are going to be hanging out, and we're going to be talking for about a couple hours about some things that inspire us, musically speaking. We'll be answering questions from my stream. So if you guys like this, please hit that sub button and hit that like button so you can get notified for when I'm posting more videos like these. Today I have with me ChampionShogo, VGMCollective, and AlltheWongNotes. You can find them all on twitch.tv/their usernames. The links will be in the description below. And we're going to jump right into our first kind of prompt that I have. We all love video game music. I think that's something we all can kind of preach in common along those lines. And I thought about what's the best way we can kind of kick something off by something we all have in common outside of playing professionally as musicians. So I want to ask all you guys and get your insight on this. What inspires you about video game music? And what games in particular opened you up to this musical realm? And feel free to just throw into the fire. Whatever your thoughts and feels are.
Anyone?
I think VGMCollective is the one to start this one.
Sure. Okay, fine. Fair enough. That's fair enough. I mean, video game music for me, I guess in my particular case, the first thing that really ignited that whole thing for me, I think, was listening to the second generation, for those of you who don't know, that's Gold, Silver, and Crystal, Pokemon music for the first time in 10 years. So let me get this. So basically, I played the game as a kid, like most of us did. And then, I went on a break from video games for a considerable amount of years, maybe like, 5 to 8, something like that, just to estimate, to get serious about music, this and that. I was quite serious about playing trumpet and jazz for a number of years. And then one day when I was at the Brubeck Institute, which is a college program I attended for 1 year, I decided that I would just revisit playing these Pokemon games just in my downtime, just for fun. I wasn't thinking anything about music. And then, just hearing that music again for the first time in such a long time just kind of brought something out in me that was just very profound and just it was obviously just a nostalgia blast. I just got kind of hit in the face with it. And then, I just started transcribing all that music from that game for just like 3 horns. So it was kind of like a classical trio type situation. And that was kind of like the ignition for the whole video game music thing, the whole path that I'm now presently on and have been on for quite a long time.
Heck yeah, dude. Heck yeah, dude.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned the Brubeck Institute. It's funny. We talked about it last time. I think you're good.
Oh, yes.
I think the interesting thing about when you were talking about the Brubeck Institute, I think we remember that you actually played at my college at the time at Rutgers in New Jersey while you were there, and I didn't even know who you were at the time.
Sure, that's
funny coincidence.
Talked about that. Yeah.
Funny coincidence.
Yeah, there were Joel Ross and Sarah Kuo, Sean Britt, and Jalen Archie.
Yeah,
I remember we talked about
all those guys. Man.
Yes.
Shogo, what about you, man?
Shogo might be having some technical situations. Maybe we should move on to Matt for now, or he's mute. Shogo's muted, so I have to assume he's having some technical issues.
Yeah, he looks a little frozen from my end.
Okay.
I mean, I'll go. I'll talk. My journey. Oh yeah, now we can.
Yeah,
All right, cool.
Okay, yeah, you go.
Go ahead and see it on the mute.
Okay.
Anyway, so I think for me, the one of the main things that got me into VGM. I mean, I was never not into VGM since I started to play video games. But I think something that got me really nostalgic about it per se was having this high school combo when I went to the Los Angeles County High School for the Arts, and I was in combo with a few influential friends of mine named Jacob Schulman, also Sarah Quo, as you mentioned, actually, too, Max, and Jeremy Klein, and a few other people. And basically, they were all super into transcribing and writing out video game music, and I obviously was an avid gamer. I just hadn't quite connected music and video games together at that time yet. But basically, in my entire high school career, pretty much that was the main thing driving me to continue learning how to improvise, transcribe, and stuff. I just wanted to do these things because, like, I think video games, like, as if any of you guys are familiar with Patrick's J music thing, I think you'll hear him talk a lot about how video game music and TV show music and things that we grew up with in our generation, assuming most people are between, 15 and 30 years old, like all that stuff kind of were the standards of our era. And I think that's something that we need to think about, like the jazz musicians of that time. Transcribing the standards of their.
I was about to say, I think that's the most fascinating thing. I wouldn't have never met any of you guys if I haven't been, streaming on Twitch for the year and a half or so, and hadn't even, known about the whole video game music platform or just the video game music scene in general. Like, I didn't even know a scene existed, which is like the weird, funny part. But yeah, I think that's something to uphold, is what people are starting to realize more about this music in general. Is it's part of our childhood. It's part of something that we all know and love, and it has that prominent nostalgic feeling that attaches us. So, as like we've learned from other jazz musicians on carrying on the greats, or learning from the greats and carrying on their traditions, we're almost like pulling the same material, but from, a different outlet in that regards that that not many people have really like tapped into. Now, of course, there's all sorts of kinds of bands along the lines that play music, and we all are acceptable to that. But yeah, I agree. I find that really fascinating, to be honest, on how like more prominent it's becoming now, and how the jazz realm and the VGM realm really coincide with one another. So. Yeah. What about you, Matt?
So yeah, my relationship with VGM it's a little different. Just because I actually didn't grow up playing video games at all. I think it was just a matter of like my parents and just my upbringing. I just was not connected. I didn't have a lot of screens around me. It just wasn't a part of how I grew up. But what I did grow up with was a lot of like old fusion music, and a lot of the music that sort of I think ended up inspiring the composers that ended up writing a lot of this video game music. And I think for me it wasn't until really I kind of got involved with the whole J music and with Max and everyone that I started actually really seeing video game music as its own thing, and really enjoying that. And I think the interesting thing actually about for me growing up, because I didn't have video games in the house. The only times I played was when I got to go hang out with friends or hang out with relatives or something. And so for me, video games always had this. I mean, I'm sure it's the same thing for everybody, but it had this very communal, like everybody coming together, and it always made me really excited. So I think it's really neat to see how like it's now like you were saying before, we're connecting it with music, and all these parallels are still there. But for me, the coolest parallel is the fact that like this is something that we're like all here in this call together, and it's like we didn't know we didn't know each other before, but it's that sort of that communal spirit that we all can kind of have. And I think that's been one of the coolest things about it. And even just getting into the Twitch streaming a little bit, and getting to know more of what this side of things is, it's just really cool to see the community and the amount of support that's there for that kind of thing.
Dang right, man. And I think that's like I said before, I don't think I would have met any of you guys if I hadn't started streaming on Twitch about a year and a half ago. Where I think I've told you guys all this story already about the Super Soul Bros. They're my main inspiration towards learning about video game music in general. And they were like, hey, we also stream on Twitch occasionally too, and there's a whole music community that exists there. So it's like that just opened a, you could say opened a Pandora's box of unknown, sorcery, wizardry material that exists as we know of as video game music.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's a really neat thing, and also just how related it is to a lot of the music that I mean I did grow up with a lot of like music from the 70s and 80s that a lot of it was based on. So it's cool to see all those relationships between things.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing too. Like with any of you guys, if you start taking like requests on Twitch, or you start like messing around with like taking people's requests whether you know them or not, because that's one of the things I do. A lot of the times I'm getting like these Japanese fusion bands that have recorded for video game music, like Mario Kart, for example. There's there's Trix, there's Cassiopeia. I'm forgetting another band I believe that's out there that exists, but like those two alone, I would have never heard of if I didn't really understand, who wrote the video game music for Mario Kart, which is one of my personal favorite series.
Yeah,
Along
for
those
sure.
lines. So, did you say that it was mostly like Sonic the Hedgehog for you, Max? That was your main thing.
Well, when I was talking earlier, I mean, I was talking about Pokemon because that's what kind of
Pokemon.
like sent me into the nosedive with the whole video game music thing. But then, if you want to talk about Sonic, I mean, that was pretty much the first video game I ever played. I wasn't really conscious of the relationship with the music at the time, but I mean, I was talking about Pokemon second gen. That's what really got me,
Right.
like, a head start into this whole universe. Sorry, was there an echo?
No, you're
Anyway,
good.
but yeah, I mean, Sonic the Hedgehog, if you want to talk about Sonic, I mean, that was like one of the first games I ever played. Like, and it was probably the first game I ever played. I was like 3 years old, and my uncle lent me his Sega Genesis because he got a Nintendo 64. So me and my brother and my dad were able to play Sonic, when I was like 3 years old or something. So that music, ended up being incredibly close to my heart, and even more so than Pokemon in some ways because of the relationship I had with it like at like such a young age, and the memories I have playing that game with my dad and things like that.
Yeah.
I didn't play much Sonic growing up as a kid, actually. If I remember correctly, one of the first games that I played was, I want to say it was like Mario Kart Double Dash on GameCube.
Oh
Or
yeah, dude.
or
Huge.
even before, if we're
Huge.
talking like, Game Boy handhelds, it was the Super Mario
Definitely.
Brothers, because like everybody
Mm.
everybody had a Game Boy growing up at the very least, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. I did have a DS. That's true. I had Game Boy and a DS.
I went from like Game Boy to like Game Boy Advance SP, then straight to a DS, and then we went to GameCube after that, along those lines. And I tell a lot of people I wasn't like an avid gamer. I played a lot of games. I enjoyed doing it. The most thing I cherished actually was playing games with friends most of the time. So, but it's still funny to me that it took me this long to finally recognize how cool the music of video games is too. It's always been one of those things in the background where the game is like your main focus and the music is just extra. A lot of the times versus I don't know if you guys feel the same way. It's just something I realize now.
Yeah, something that I want to add to that too is that like I think growing up a lot of my heart and aspiration and like everything I wanted to do was like, man, I love playing video games. Or specifically for me, it wasn't that many. I was super into Pokemon. I was super into Mario Kart Double Dash. I was really into Smash Brothers. But just like being like, man, I wish I could just do this like for a living. This was before I knew anything about esports and streaming. This was way before Twitch.
Right.
So I was like, that would be amazing. And then like finding the video game music later on, because music was the thing that I had stuck with. Both of my parents are musicians, so it was kind of the thing that I just was exposed to from early age. I was like, oh, music is the way that I can like link my video game passion to my like survival, which is kind of cool. And now there's so many other ways to do that.
What
Music is one of those things that I think really deeply connects to us. I think some of it. Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
I was just gonna say some of it has to do with the fact that when we're stuck in those dungeons or doing those things like that require repetitive action, we're hearing the same song on repeat over and over again. It's not like a movie where when the scene passes it's over. You literally subconsciously get these songs drilled into your brain when you're working on in the actual video game. So that's something that I think even strengthens that nostalgia connection.
When do you think was it a time in your lives, guys? I'll say this for everybody. When was this? What do you think was a time in your life where it hit you that you realized that this video game music thing is a little bit, or like when did it hit you that like you were playing games for X amount of time and then boom you realize, oh, the music is more significant than just being the background in the game?
I mean, for me, it's precisely what I said before. It was that moment at the Brubeck Institute when I was replaying through Pokemon Second Gen, and it kind of just hit me at a perfect time in my development where I had just spent 4 years at a very prestigious high school studying jazz harder than I ever have in my life, even to this date. For those 4 years that I spent at Dillard, just like endless practicing, endless listening. And, right after literally coming out of that, I come to the Brubeck Institute where I find myself with an incredible amount of downtime with almost nothing to do, very less inspired to practice jazz, and then I hear this Pokemon music, you know what I mean, while I'm playing it in my downtime, and then everything just kind of connected like a huge explosion. So it was precisely that year where it happened.
So being less inspired, that must have felt weird. That must have been like a weird feeling to cope with. During
Well,
that
sure. I mean, you go from being at Dillard High School, which is like an incredibly, positive environment. Everyone was studying jazz hard, just practicing like 10 hours a day. And you go to the Brubeck Institute, which was also a very positive environment. Don't get me wrong, I had a great year there, but there was just an incredible amount of downtime, And then, I just decided to replay through this Pokemon game, and then, next thing you knew, it just that was the moment though. It was the same moment that I was talking about before, yeah.
Wow. Man. It's quite fascinating. I don't think we've all ever had the chance to talk this deep about how video games just influence in our livelihood as we were growing up as teens. But the other thing to note on how that really brought us up on our upbringing for our professional music careers, right? Because we're all, freelance musicians trying to do our own thing and survive in especially during these circumstances. It's much harder now with all you guys. Now, I know all you guys have been starting to get your streaming game together and starting on Twitch. How do you guys feel like that that experience has helped you or hurt you or otherwise as a musician in general?
Max.
I mean, I don't want to keep taking the floor, but I will say, like, I know in me and Matt Wong's case, like, we literally started like a month ago, and I think Jasper's been on the grind a little longer than us as far as Twitch in particular is concerned. I could be wrong, but yeah, the Twitch thing for me started like, I mean, Dom, it was like literally a month ago, if that.
Yeah. Like it's kind of weird because I didn't really, I don't know, it was something I'd always sort of thought about, and like I saw mainly actually Pat was the first person that I had heard about that was doing it, and I think Dom you had said that you kind of got him into that as well.
Yeah.
But I think Patrick Bartley, the J Music Ensemble. But yeah, I don't know, it was just sort of something because like mainly what I do for a living is like arranging a lot of different music, and like it's a lot of work where I'm literally just by myself on a computer looking at a screen. So like I think it was probably just quarantine, like, when quarantine started, that a light bulb went off in my head, like, oh, I could just share my screen and have people watch me do work and talk and, and just talk about what I'm doing. I mean, I don't even know if there's an interest there, but it's something that, like, as a composer arranger, a lot of your work is kind of internal, and it's very much like private, and like you don't really get to show off what you do aside from the final performance of the final product.
Right.
So it was like a shift in perspective for me. Like, okay, how can I turn like the process into something that that can be observed, and that and even just getting comfortable with that, I think has been a huge thing for me. Like, I think something is as musicians, we're used to being able to have time to ourselves completely privately, and then we can kind of show off, so to speak, what we've practiced. And I think the streaming thing is it's been a good opportunity to really be thinking about like in the moment and engaging in like what that process is like, which I think especially in this really weird time, it's something that I'm trying to do in my regular life anyway. So it's been really helpful with doing that, really engaging in the process.
That's the funny thing for me. I've been making a point as of late. I got my performance degree in jazz drum set at college back 4 years ago, and now I'm here on a live streaming performance platform. So technically, I've already quote unquote prepared myself for something like this. I didn't even cross my mind thinking I was gonna be on Twitch for since I graduated college in that respect too. So I find it the most interesting where you can, utilize this platform in any way, shape, or form. I think there is an audience out there for people that are looking for more like composing and arranging kind of stuff. Maybe it's not the most popular thing you're going to see out there in the market today because it's not mostly in demand. But if anything, I think you're on the right track with regards of giving it a shot and, seeing if there are people out there.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of it, and I think we're all trying to figure out like how are we gonna make what our thing is, because I don't want to change what I'm doing to be able to fit a stream or something. I just want to be able to show off what I'm doing. But how can we best present like our thing in the most like in the light that we want it to be presented in. And I think that's what the streaming platforms really. I mean, it's been really cool for me because I can really think about like how do I want myself to be presented.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think that's huge. And just to add to that too, it's like, you know, we spend all this time doing freelance work, like, oh, playing in this band, playing in that band, playing at this venue, and like I love doing all that. I think we all love doing that. But part of it is like, you know, that's only a one windowed view of what everything we like to do is, you know. And I think there's not like jazz VGM clubs yet, you know, though I would argue that's something that we'll see, you know. There's not spaces out there yet for us to do this kind of stuff, but there is a community, you know, and there is, I mean, just by looking at this chat right now and being here with you guys, we know that there's a community, you know, and being a musician is so much about the community. So like, it's a way for us to kind of create that space without having to deal with like opening a venue or a shop, you know. And it's cool because so many people of this community are hip to like the online world and like gaming communities and, you know, Reddit and other Discord servers and things like that. And I think that's something that we as artists can really capitalize on, that to create our own space, right? Because like if you go to music school, I don't want to talk too much, I'm sorry, but yeah, people saying I'm quiet. I can try and talk closer to the mic. But you know, if you think about music school, like you're taught by people that have made a living doing something that is no longer possible. You know, they made a living playing in bands or recording for other people or doing things in the bigger scope of being a musician that are no longer opportunities available for people of our generation. So it's really up to us to create our own stage and our own community, our own platform to present what we want to present, you know?
Right.
And I think the online community is that for us, and Twitch is that for us. So it's something that we can really connect and develop new ways of presenting art on, you know?
I think that's the biggest thing that's enlightened me is like I like to describe Twitch as a place where it's a worldwide stage at the comfort of your own home, right?
Yeah.
You know, of course, in these limitations, we can't, you know, be together in the same room making the same music, because really that's the experience that I think is the most important to all of us as musicians. I miss that most importantly, where you know, getting to share the connections between a couple different people in the same room and trying to make the music feel good. No internet jam is going to emulate that. I mean, like, I've done a bunch of collaborations with friends online, and I take them over nothing at this point because I don't mind it at all. But there's still something to be said about that. The ability to be able to make music with somebody and connect on a human level versus a virtual level is a significant difference along those lines. So Shogo speaking some truth, because this whole streaming thing, I think, has gotten more recognition as of late, at least in my eyes, and I feel like now's the time more than ever to recognize that how much of a tool this is really going to help not only all of us as musicians but all of us as human beings. You know. And yeah,
Totally.
There's
it's honestly really encouraging. Like even just like yesterday, like Max, like he rated my stream or whatever. Like it's just cool to see how much sort of like support and just funny like things that I don't know. That's something that you don't really get as much in the real world, I think, because you know people feel weird about talking to each other for some reason. But like just the amount of support and love that you know I've just randomly gotten. It's really neat. Yeah, it's a testament to, I don't know, it's a testament to something.
That's one thing I'll say for you guys and anybody that tries to do streaming online on any platform whatsoever. I've seen the most supportive from people on here on Twitch, just in general, than I ever have seen in my life. I mean, like, of course, I have family and friends that support me to death, and I'm lucky, you know, to have people in my life, IRL, that, you know, appreciate us or me or whoever for what we do, but the secondary part of like this community aspect that brings on the streaming service is incredible, and it just makes me think, man, we are lucky to be able to have like a platform like this. We are lucky to have resources of the internet that actually help us drive to create and do what we do along those lines too. I don't know if it's something you guys have experimented with. I know Shogo has experimented with this at all. Have you like when you guys play, like Matt, I don't think you've have you done much playing on your stream as of yet, or no?
I sort of treat it a lot more of like a casual thing. Like if there's a song that comes on the playlist that I want to play along with, I turn on the keyboard and play along with it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do like a lot of playing. It's more random though. It's more sporadic. It's not really a playing trend. It's more just it's like how I go through my day-to-day life, which is writing a little bit and then playing, shedding a little bit, and then writing a little bit and shedding a little bit.
Right.
But yeah.
How for Shogo and Max, how do you feel like your performance experiences have been as of late on streaming on Twitch versus playing gigs normally?
Do you want to go? Do you want me to go?
You should go for it. I'm gonna go get different glasses.
That's an excellent question. I mean, I've definitely found that there is a difference or there can be a difference, especially in mindset, when playing on Twitch versus live. There are technical differences too, especially for me, like as far as volume, and now I have the luxury of playing into a mic, so I've actually had a couple of profound realizations just regarding like my chops and my endurance and how I can conserve that by playing on Twitch versus playing like in a live club where I may or may not otherwise have to conform to the room, so to speak, for my volume on the horn. I'm not sure if that's the type of answer you were looking for, but that's definitely one thing. And then as far as like engaging the audience, it's incredibly different too, because on Twitch, I mean, people are watching you and just you. I mean, when I'm on the bandstand with you, my band, or if I'm a side man for someone else, I mean, well, when I'm a side man, I don't say a word. I just try to read the music or play it the best I can. And then when it's my band, I'll talk in between, maybe in between every 3 songs, and we'll do transitions. But when I'm streaming, I feel more of an inclination to be as how do I say, just be as interactive as I can, all the time. So I'll talk to people in between licks I play and things like that, So I mean, in that aspect, it's certainly different. I mean, I would never do that on a live performance, but for example, when I'm streaming on Twitch, I do song requests in my stream. That's how we open up the stream. We do like an hour's worth of song requests, and like I'll do as much talking as I can to engage the audience. Especially. And it's definitely not forced, because oftentimes in my stream, we request only video game music across the board. Like, I know you have VGM Mondays, right?
Right. I only do it on Mondays because I try to keep things different every day, or every time I stream.
Right. And then me being VGMCollective, that being my entire brand and my entire just everything,
Yeah, that's a dang shame. That's really weird.
What happened?
I'm still streaming, so it seems like we're all right, but my video feed has changed. Learning process. Yeah, you know what it is? Hey, chat. Sorry again. First time professional streamer right here.
This is what Max was talking about, though. We learn these things by trying them on stream.
Yeah, that's been like every single stream I've done is just like, oh, I have a ton of technical difficulties. And
yeah, same.
Figure out
I'm still
shit.
there. I'm still there. I'm like, man, this sounds bad. This looks good. This is what it is. Where should I put the
No,
mic?
weirdly enough, for me, I've been on such a smooth groove of no technical difficulties or minor. And now all of them are just slapping down on today's stream saying, "You want to do a podcast? No."
Think again.
Hey, sorry about that.
Because you have all of us noobs cracking.
For anybody
Yeah,
anybody just joining chat, I want to say thank you for being here. I hope you guys are all enjoying the talk so far. I hope you guys are getting something out of this along those lines. Like I said, this is kind of new. This is something different I'm trying. I don't know what Max is doing.
Max, you disappeared on us.
I'm not doing anything. I'm here in the podcast.
If there's anybody new hanging out with us, say what's up. I would like to know who's here. I was trying not to talk too much with chat because I wanted to keep the content going, but I guess I'm going to have to do some editing at some point, don't I? So, Jasper, I think you were talking about a point or something. I missed it, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, I was like starting to think about like the medium of Twitch that Max was talking about. Like, I think something that we have to do when transitioning from live music to Twitch or whatever is that like we have to realize that it is very much a different medium, I think the wrong mindset a lot of musicians have is that live streaming is less than live performing, though, because it is live performing. It's just a different kind of interactivity with your audience. And I think it's really important to use our creative artist brains or whatever we call it to like kind of figure out how we can adapt uh, our performing style to and our like talents or skills or whatever that we've learned to the medium of live streaming, right? So that doesn't mean just like, oh, I'm gonna go Instagram live and play 10 songs and then it's gonna be over. You know, that's like that's cool. I've enjoyed watching some of those, you know, but also at the same time, it's not something that is sustainable or the same or can carry the same kind of energy from a consumer standpoint. And
Yeah, just
that which is something that obviously Dom among other streamers have done really well and developed and like I think that's something that's really cool and great and lays a lot of groundwork for the future of artists streaming. But also, I think that is cool because it leaves there's so much more space. There's so much more creative space in the streaming world that has yet to even be touched on, and I think we can all think about. And that's something that's always exciting to an artist, right? If you're an artist, you're always trying to do something new. You're trying to do something like new and special and like something that's not just fresh for your audience, but something that's fresh for you as the performer, right? And we have so much space to do that on a live streaming platform that I think needs to be thought about more from performers in general.
It's so funny, especially like during these times now, since like we're all home, we're all kind of struggling to make sure we're keeping ourselves sane along those lines. I think it's very fascinating for us to think about like I've been on Twitch for a year and a half now. It's not the same when you go live on Instagram or you go live on Facebook has their own gaming. They have their own gaming ability, so you can kind of do your thing there. And so I've seen some people stream on Facebook, and they seem to have some top gamers that are like really successful through there. I've seen even like their booths at previous gaming conventions that I've went to. But I agree, there's something to be said about when you're live streaming something like this platform in general forces you to have to adapt, and adaptation I think is one of the biggest things we always have to be aware about, just even our own musical lives, right? If we can't adapt on a gig that somebody gets called last minute to do, and you can't sight read or learn the tunes in a couple of hours versus being able to kind of go with the flow, if that's saying, then I think you're not going to survive along those lines. It's very fascinating, but I also feel like the experience alone of what you can do to monetize yourself and what you can do to grow your audience really forces you to think outside the box sometimes. And for me, like I said, Twitch is.
I think. Sorry.
No, you're good. Twitch is like one of the last things I expected to actually really get into along those lines, but I've been loving it so far. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out. I mean, I think that's something about artistry in general. Is I think the greatest test actually of artistry is your ability to transfer it to different mediums, and we see that within music a lot. People that double on instruments that like are able to maintain their soul voice on whatever instrument they do. Jacob Collier is an example now, but like Pops. Louis Armstrong was another person. He sings the exact same way that he plays trumpet. It's an inner soul. And I think the same thing. I think it's just really important for artists and musicians for us to start thinking about these platforms as those other mediums. You know what I mean? Because being able to engage with people in and of itself is another art. You know what I mean? And I think being able to expand our artistry to be able to include all of that is really important. I mean, I'm just repeating stuff.
No, it's funny that you say that with like just interaction with people in general, connecting with another person as an art of itself. I make a big point a lot of the times with regards of like you have to be able to. I think you can connect with any human being on the earth. It's whether or not if your minds are willing to be able to connect with one another. If you vibe off the same way or something, or have something similar in common that you can talk to somebody about. Like I don't think all four of us would be here in this stream at the same time right now if we all didn't have like-minded ideas, or we shared things that we all liked or did things because we're all musicians, or we all play video games, or we all enjoy just like hanging and stuff like that. It's funny to me how much of an art it is with just talking to people in itself. And I think I remember taking a communications class actually while I was at school, just for a prerequisite course, But I learned a little bit of techniques through there where at least it helped me realize a few things about how to talk to somebody and what tendencies do they have when they're trying to say something. I mean, you know, I don't remember the stuff in that class. It's been like 6 years.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, for sure.
all right, cool. All right, why not we get to something a little bit different? This will probably be a little bit more of a change of pace, but something I wanted to get your guys' insight on. A lot of the people here that are watching the stream know me as a drummer. Most of them have probably only seen me through my streams. And I talk a lot about, you know, the role of a drummer. I talk a lot about what it means to be a drummer a lot of the times, what responsibilities we have. And I wanted to get your guys' insight. From your position, what responsibilities do you believe a drummer must be aware of? And what roles do you think they play when you're playing with a drummer along those lines?
Ooh. Can I talk first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, wait. Can you? What do you mean by the second part of your question? I just want to be clear. Do you mean like the role the drummer should play, or like what do I like?
What you could say? You could say what you personally believe. You could say your personal opinion along those lines too. It's kind of. I'm curious to just know what everybody's personal intake of what they like about a drummer, or when they're playing with somebody, or what they prefer a drummer to do, or even like, let's even say the understandings of, you know, the qualifications you have to call X drummer on a gig, for example.
Okay. Well, I have kind of weird expectations maybe by some people's standards, just because my dad is a percussionist and drummer, so I grew up with that all the time in my house and in my face and all over everywhere. So like you know, my thing with drummers is that I feel like, well, okay, first of all, it's hard to be really general because it really depends on the music you're playing, right? If you're playing like crafted VGM music, if you're playing stuff that was 8-bit music and you're trying to move it into like humans playing it, you need a different kind of drummer than if you're going to be playing totally freeform, no grooves at all, like improvised stuff. You know?
Right.
It takes a different person to play different music, I think. I mean, of course, then you have some people that can just do it all, which is great too. But again, somebody that can just do it all might not necessarily be what you want on a specific gig either, right? So I think like there's 3 things that I like to take into account when I'm calling a drummer. One is where, the space, like what kind of venue is it? What kind of gig? Like what is the setting, right? Because there's drummers that I think sound better in different settings. Like there's some drummers that always call for like small groups, small venue settings, and then there's other drummers where if it's a bigger scale venue, then I want them, you know.
I feel that.
2 is what is the instrumentation of the group, right? If it's gonna be like drums, percussion, and vibes, you know, you need to have a drummer that understands how to play with other percussionists and other drummers, which is versatility. That's where somebody who can kind of do everything is really good, because they can adapt. Again, we're talking about, I guess adaptation is kind of the theme, but like that adaptability, I think is one of the main qualities that you look for sometimes. And then so there's sensitivity to the space, adaptability to the instrumentation, and then the last thing is just straight like, I think kind of like, are the kind of energy they bring. Do they have a supportive energy? Are they down to just play a backbeat for 10 minutes? Or are they the kind of drummer that's like crazy and like loves to throw stuff in all the time, you know? And both are awesome in different situations. I think both are great. It's great to have drummers that are like, you know, like a lit bomb ready to go off. I think that's really exciting to play with sometimes. And then sometimes it's really good to have a drummer that's going to keep it chill the whole time and just play one groove and be down to do that the whole time. So I guess we can call that like variability or something. I don't know what the actual word would be for that, but
versatility.
Yeah. Versatility. I guess versatility and adaptability are different, but like just like somebody like a drummer that like, I kind of like specificity though. You know, I don't know if versatility is.
That's a better word. That's a better word in your case scenario, at least from my eyes. Cause like,
yeah, because like, you know, we've played at Kismet, we've played at Tommy Jazz, we've played at Black
we've done
Cat,
a bunch
like,
of different gigs together at this
those
point.
Those are all different, and Sylvana, you know, those are all completely different gigs, you know, and I think like you're one of the most versatile and sensitive drummers to the space that I know, which is why it works in all four of those different venues, you know. But of course, there are other drummers too that I feel like, oh, this drummer sounds amazing at Tommy Jazz. This drummer sounds amazing at Sylvana, you know, but I wouldn't necessarily cross them. So it's like, I think it just really depends on the venue, the instrumentation, and the strength of the creative strength of the drummer. That's the things that I really care about. And I think it's different. I don't think you can call the same person for every gig you play, unless of course you're playing the same type of.
I was about to say, unless you're playing the same band and you're on tour, then
Right.
the same person for every gig works. But
Right.
I think that's what I appreciate about you, because you have such particular constraints on, you know, what you like out of certain guys. And I totally respect, you know, when any other musician calls somebody else, you know, they have their reasons. Everybody's going to have their own
Right.
individual reasons of what they believe on what they feel like is going to be the best situation for them. You know,
Totally.
that's us as human beings. Max or Matt, you guys want to chime in on this?
I mean, yeah, I'll talk for a second. Yeah, drummers are a huge grammar. Yeah, drummers are a huge for me. If I'm putting together my own group, like it's drummers, but it's actually specifically the drum and bass hookup. Like how
Yeah.
those two people play together is the foundation of how everything will feel. At least in my opinion.
That's huge. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and so in terms of that, I'm thinking about and it's not necessarily basically, you know, reflecting a lot of the stuff that Jasper was saying. Just, you know, you got to call the right people for the right music, for the right venue, for all of that. But in terms, I mean, if I'm going to talk super specifically, a lot of my music comes from sort of this very beat driven. You could call it funk, but I like to think of it more as beat driven. So for me, it's really important that whoever's playing has a really good sense of time, but like a really good sense of like groove and how groove should shift over different tempos. That's something that I personally really like in drummers, that they're able to make any feel, no matter how slow, how fast, be able to make it feel either, you know, I mean, it's not necessarily about being completely perfectly in time, but it's about being able to understand the dynamic of the group. Like, is the group pushing?
Yep.
Is the group pulling? Is, you know, what do you have to do to be able to make the group do those things?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to interrupt, but just a quick point. I would rather play with a drummer that is not metronomically perfect but feels amazing 10 out of 10 times over a drummer that like forces this beat that doesn't sound like, even if you play metronomically perfect, if it doesn't feel good, it doesn't matter.
Dang right.
Yeah, totally. And that's the thing, is that we actually, the way that we hear tempo, I mean, we know this from listening to classical music and music that changes, or more contemporary classical music that changes meters and changes tempos often. You know, having a solid groove for an entire time isn't as important as understanding in any given musical moment how that feels. And I think I just, you know, like Jess was saying, I prefer people that like are able to really understand what that moment is, and you know, have at least a similar enough context of music to be able to relate it to, you know, what is needed for that moment. Yeah, it's important. Anyways, Max.
Oh, hi. Yeah. I mean, my opinions are pretty much the same, maybe slightly different. I mean, for me, a drummer being metronomically precise and feeling good are almost one and the same. Almost. There are definitely differences, but you know, for me, you know, video game music being pretty much my main influence outside of like jazz. You know, 99% of that stuff is quantized, literally. You know, it's literally quantized, and for that reason, you know, I mean, for me, a drummer is like the very ground that you walk on. It's like, it's literally everything. Like if you know, without it, you would literally just be floating in space for me. So, you know, when I hire a drummer, ask a drummer to play, I prefer for the time, you know, for the time to just be so incredibly precise that it's just indistinguishable. That's, I would say that's number two. And I would say number one is just understanding the source material, just period. You know, spending time with whatever it is that we're tackling. So in my case, video game music, a reason why I really like hiring Andres, and he's pretty much my main dude with this band. No offense to you, obviously, Dom, but Andres Valbueno, he sheds with the recordings, and he puts in like hours on the recordings. Like basically, for those of you who don't know, I mean, it's pretty much out of the bag at this point, but we were going to be recording a record. Matt Wong was going to be on that record just earlier this month, and this whole pandemic thing kind of threw a stake in that. So Andreas has been like shedding with the recordings just nonstop. And for me, that's number one. You know, if you're willing to take the time to listen to the source material, which in my case for video game music is OST, and it is just just that. So if you're willing to take the time and listen to those recordings like over and over again and play with them, and you obviously do your homework otherwise as a drummer, which in my humble opinion is just practicing with a metronome for like 10 hours a day, then that's kind of the things I look for in a drummer. I mean, as far as feeling good, it is kind of hard for me to distinguish what the difference between feeling good and just playing in time is, from a drummer. But I know there are definitely differences that involve like listening and interacting.
Well, it's not even that, but there's just some time feels where people just you have to play behind the beat. You have to feel like you're dragging in order for it to like feel good.
Yeah, time feel is definitely a thing. Like you can be playing 60 beats per measure in 5 different ways. I do definitely agree.
Yeah.
With you. Like a time feel is definitely a fact.
That's kind of what I was trying to say. Like obviously it's important to have good time if you're a freaking drummer, right? Obviously that's like so important. Like, I'm not saying that like, oh, I don't care if you rush and drag.
What, you're not a drummer that plays in time, man? Do you even know what this time thing is?
That's me. I'm a drummer that doesn't play in time.
No, I'm obviously it's important. I guess what I'm saying is that like, if I wanted just like a metronomically perfect drummer, I would just play with a backing track or a metronome.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's
like
true.
why would I even call a drummer if I wanted just this the whole time,
It's true.
But that's again, that's my preference. There are people that are like, no man, the energy, you gotta have the person, which I feel that too. But for me, what matters is the groove, like the feel, like the groove, right? I don't care if it speeds up 10 clicks over the course of 10 minutes. I don't care if it slows down 20 clicks over the course of, 2 songs. It's just like, it's more about like does everybody have a clear understanding of where the time is, And if they do, then the drummer can take liberties. But like if they don't, the drummer needs to be supportive to that.
Yeah, it's almost the thought process of like thinking human versus robot, if we will.
Exactly.
In the ideas, in the ideal.
And robots are fine. Robots are fine.
Not even versus. I would say humans combined with robots, and how efficiently can you achieve both those elements?
You want like this robot skeleton, but you want like the skin of a human. You know what I mean? Like you want the grid of a robot, but you want like the trappings, like all the feel of a human.
Exactly.
It's all there.
It's super fascinating because that's like something for me, since I've played with all you guys before, and like I think there's a lot of drummers that maybe don't realize how important it is to have good time, have good feel, just along those lines of being aware about all these checklists, these things that will make you quote unquote a professional, or make you somebody that people want to call you back or hire you on a gig or something like that. At least for me, I know a lot of the times I'm always trying to make sure my feel is good, make sure my time is good, and kind of make it seem like both of those are one, because they do overlap a lot of the times. Whereas like in your case, Max, with that guy Andreas, who I need to check out. I bet he's killing. Especially if he does this stuff.
I can attest.
Andres is
I need to check him out. But the other thing is like, there are guys that are willing to put the hours and time in order to make sure that they get the exact feeling for this song, and even playing the exact parts on the tune for that matter, respecting the parts for what it is. I say this a lot in my stream, and sometimes my biggest problem I have with whenever I'm taking requests is I'm just covering up over somebody else's work that they've already put hours and hours of time into perfecting. And then when I'm just doing my own thing instead of respecting the music that already exists there, that's a whole nother, it could be a whole nother conversation, but I think it has enough to do with making sure you have good time and feel with regards of just playing the part, respecting the music for what it is. And
man, the other thing I'll also mention about playing parts specifically, because I read a lot of big band music where it's like I literally write out the drum part, and I think there's what I really have come to value in drummers is not necessarily an ability to sight read well, but an ability to like look at any kind of chart and basically understand what should be happening. You know what I mean? Like,
I know
and
what
that
you're
it's
saying.
it's just like it's so hard. It's hard to find like a lot of times I find it's actually it's the drummers that have that are also like play other instruments or have played other instruments in bands that it's sort of this understanding. I really like drummers that can understand everything that's
Totally.
happening because they have to be able to react to all the things that are happening within that. So
There was
people
actually
that interpret charts well.
yeah.
Definitely. Oh man.
There was a
Yeah.
moment, actually, I remember when I was playing in big band back when I was in college. Actually, I lied. I think this was during college, but this no, it was a year actually after that I graduated school. The school called me back and said, "Hey, can you play with the first band? Because we need your help." So I ended up taking that semester-long gig. And one of the professors there, Abraham Burton, great tenor saxophone player,
Yeah.
he was like conducting us through a piece, one rehearsal, one of those times, and he made a big deal of like talking to me, where he's like, "Hey, you need to check out everything that is happening in this tune, because I feel like if you have a better idea of what's going on in the bigger picture, you're going to be able to make the band sound and drive much better." A lot of the times, I guess people misunderstand how much the drummer in a big band jazz setting or jazz big band setting, of what that differentiates to every other kind of band that is out there. We have to be able to, lock in with the rhythm section, and mark the form, but then on top of that, be able to be responsible about how the lead trumpet player is playing phrases and dynamics, and then also accentuating all other sorts of inner line parts that are happening within the context of just the tune that they're playing. This is all stuff that you sometimes don't learn when you're in school.
Yep.
I do think it is kind of a double-edged sword though too, because it's like, on one hand it's like, it's kind of mind-boggling sometimes to me. Drummers at such a high level often have so much difficulty just following a simple chart.
Right.
But then on the flip side, it's also mind-boggling to me how musicians that are non-drummers at a really high level have no idea how to write a drum part, right?
Yeah.
So like
Me.
you kind of can't blame the drummers all the time because they're used to reading
Literally me.
horrible charts. But also at the same time, if you're a drummer and you have to read rhythms, it's like, man, just read, at least acknowledge what's on the page. It's a duality that needs to be paid attention to. I think
It's such a gray area. I've had
Yeah, you're so right.
I've had so many friends and other people talk to me about, oh, what do you like to see on a drum part for a chart, or even just a lead sheet for that matter.
Right. People don't know.
Man, I'm gonna do a stream on drum parts.
I would just
Dude, I would watch it.
Yeah.
I would watch.
At least for me, I'll tell you right now, the one thing I prefer to see is the melody and the chords and any hits along those lines. Not if you have an exact part you want to write it, then put that information on the page, because that way you're telling the drummer exactly what you want to hear. If anything, whenever I'm writing music, which I haven't put something on Sibelius in a long time, I usually try to put as much information as possible so people have a clear idea of what exactly I would like to happen.
Your chart writing is spectacular, Dom. I will say your charts are extremely clear and easy to understand.
I mean,
just want to say that.
I appreciate that.
I really respect that.
Well, I've only had you play on like one or two of my gigs, but
Yeah, but your book is flawless.
Oh yeah, I was on that gig, right?
Yeah, you're on
Max
that gig
was
too,
on it.
Max. Yeah, that was fun.
No, the only reason that we were able to get out of that gig without completely crashing and burning were your charts.
It's true. It's true. I didn't want to go that
thank
far.
you, dude. It really can be. It really can be that simple sometimes.
Oh,
it really
man.
does come down to that sometimes, man. It's like sometimes a chart can't save you at all. It's like the band's already fucked. But in the case of you, oh, sorry about that word, by the way. But in the case of your band, the charts literally saved us that night. I think. I mean, not that not that it wouldn't have gone great otherwise, but your charts certainly helped a tremendous deal.
I think one thing's for sure. There's something to be said with regards of like when you play a lot of gigs with the same people, and I had a lot of the same charts in my. So like before I had you guys in the group. And I've called a number of different musicians for a lot of my gigs whenever I was working in Jersey or occasionally in New York. it would always be different depending on how we do things. And the book never really necessarily changed. Everybody would have different reading tendencies based on what's happening. Or I'd have to remind people, like saying, "Oh, this is my intention behind this roadmap." But then with playing with the same group or for a while, there's something to be said about playing a gig without sheet music, because that allows you to take care of one less thing you have to worry about, of learning the roadmap or learning the melody, making sure you play the right chords at the right time. You allow the interactivity to be the thing, and more musical things that we always I believe strive for whenever we're going along that sense. So I mean, that's another double-edged sword. It's great to have sheet music to help you out on a gig whenever you're trying to learn something on the fly, but at the same time, it kind of can block you from some interactivity or some more higher levels of musicianship.
Right. I mean, I totally agree. That's kind of why. I mean, my whole thing is like, I don't want people that can sight read a drum part perfectly. I want somebody that can understand what a song is calling for. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's people that like may be able to read every single hit in a chart, but like can't keep time through the whole thing. When it's really like, no, I wrote in these hits so that you could understand what's going on. Like, keep time and play the hits. Like, time is first. Kind of goes back to like, what do we want in a drummer? We want time first. And I think that's something. I mean, all musicians, I think, we could all do with understanding the totality of like what a song is when we look at a chart, because that's all charts are. They're a shortcut to understanding what a song is. And I think the best sight readers are actually the people that can get to the core of what that song is, and then additionally be able to serve that better beyond just the part.
Right.
So yeah, it's something
about relativity. It's about the relativity of your part to the rest of the music. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this brings up a really interesting point just about like, bands that are able to rehearse a lot, and just bands that just can't rehearse a lot, or just bands that are kind of like one-off, club dates. If you have a date at like a really prestigious club, but it's only 4 nights and you may only have like an hour's worth of rehearsal, I think it brings up a really interesting point in that regard, because certain bands, like touring bands who do a lot of like, festival dates and things like that, it's like, okay, they're able to rehearse for like 12, 24, 48 hours, maybe even more. You know what I mean? And they're able to do that. And, they develop what, in my humble opinion, is a much better like band sound. And you get a much better understanding of playing with a band when you do so many gigs like that.
Totally.
But then on the other hand, oftentimes in New York City or anywhere else, I'm sure, but, in New York, if you get hired to play a gig, you may not have all that rehearsal time, and you are expected to pull off just as stellar of a performance. If you're at the Blue Note, or if you're at the Village Vanguard, one of those prestigious jazz clubs. You know what I mean? So that's why I think it's really important to discuss like the balance of, being able to read a chart perfectly, note for note, but then also being a good musician that can listen and adapt to a group, and just trying to, the better you can, blend those two things and become as well-rounded as possible, the better you are going to be off, just no matter what,
Totally. I think something, obviously, as listeners, bands are like, so I would say the majority of the time I would rather listen to a band than like a random put together group. But also at the same time, as somebody who's played in God knows how many bands, like, you have to devote a certain amount of time to the band's growth and to your own growth, and they don't always connect. They're not always the same thing. Like, obviously, from playing in a band, you grow as a musician and a person, and that in turn helps you and your individual thing, whatever. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, if you're with this really tight band that rehearses a lot and plays a bunch of gigs, that band is growing on its own path, right? That doesn't necessarily make you a more functional musician in other situations, right? That doesn't make you that doesn't even make you a hireable musician. Even if your band is amazing, that doesn't mean you're even close to hireable. Sometimes it literally makes you less hireable, because if you're with a band, the things that you're weak at get compensated for by other people that are strong at things, right? So like, you really have to pay close attention to building your skill set as a musician and your skill set as a band. And the band thing is about the team, right? It's about everybody picking up equal amounts of weight for each other musically. And then your individual thing is like, and maybe you don't want to just be called as a musician. Maybe you just want to play in bands, and that's totally fine too. But you have to be aware of that, You have to be aware of what your agenda is as a musician to determine what you're going to work on.
My teacher Victor Lewis brings up a great point. He always
Oh,
likes
Victor Lewis.
he always likes to think of the idea of team ball. Team ball. So where each of us would have the ball and we would pass it around to each other along those lines. So that way you can, get used to everybody having a piece of the pie, everybody being a collective along those lines, and making a group effort versus a one's effort or a singular effort along those
Yeah.
lines. And I think that's
Totally.
something to resonate with too, where you were bringing up the point of like bands do indeed have their own growth, but we as individuals also have our own individual growth too. And how those two relate or whether they cross paths or not, I believe also makes a big significant difference,
Totally.
especially
Yeah.
because like I used to gig with my band all the time. Now I haven't really done my own stuff outside of doing my own thing, streaming and playing for other people. So the question then we could also talk about a little bit too is side band versus band leader, which came first. I know for me, I guess technically speaking for me, I started being a band leader first before a side band, and now I've been trying to like think, okay, how can I be a better side man, and influence that to hopefully become a better band leader in the future
Yeah.
along those
Totally.
lines, right?
Oh, we're being told by the chat to hydrate, guys. I
Hydrate?
am actually very thirsty. I'm gonna grab
I only have
some
coffee
water.
and tequila.
I hope
Which
you guys
one?
are all.
Hydrate.
I will take this moment in time. If you guys haven't been aren't following any of these guys, make sure you do so. If you're just joining us, welcome to the stream. My name's Don Palombi. I usually play drums and music here on Twitch. We'll be taking requests later on, but I have three awesome human beings I've gotten the pleasure to know joining us. We have AlltheWongNotes, Matt Wong on keys, Max Boyko from VGMCollective on trumpet, and Shogo will be back, but he plays a bunch of various woodwind instruments. All fantastic musicians out of New York City, and they are also streaming a bunch. Yo, JT Donathan, my dude with the 500 bits. Thank you, man.
Yo, shout out.
He's a sax player from Rutgers. I haven't seen him in a minute, man. Good to have you on
I mean,
Twitch.
I met him when I came to Rutgers, or no?
Actually, I don't think he was at Rutgers while you were playing with the JT. Were you at Rutgers at the time during the Brubeck Institute came through? Love you too, man. Thank you so much for the support. I hope you're doing
thanks
well.
thanks for the bits.
Thank you for the bits. Nope, no, you weren't there. Okay, so Max, you probably wouldn't know who he is.
Word. Well, thanks for joining either way.
Why don't we do this? Let's start taking some questions from you guys. So if you guys have questions, do me a favor. Go to our Discord page. There's an Ask Don Palombi section that you guys can throw your questions in there. It's the easiest way for me to keep track because with chat constantly moving, it's gonna be tricky for me to keep track with some of this stuff. So we're gonna take some of your guys' questions for like another 40 minutes or so. And then we'll kind of rock and roll. But this has been fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I don't know about you guys, but I hope.
Yeah.
That's
cool.
awesome.
I mean, cool if we take 5 to go hydrate really quick there, Dom?
Yeah,
I
I'll take the floor if you guys need to go take
it. For Matt, Matt said he had coffee and tequila, and both of those things dehydrate you, actually. So maybe
I know. I need to go
get some of that
I was
agua.
thinking if you drink both of them at the same time, you might become hydrated. Anyway, I'll be right back.
Sounds good.
Become lit.
That's how math works, right? All right.
Sounds
Anyway,
good.
thank you
Right.
guys.
Sounds good. No
That's
problem.
how Matt works.
That's how Matt works. Just mute
Anyway,
yourself.
I'm gonna mute my microphone, but thank you, Dom. It's been a really fun.
Yeah, we'll be back in 5.
Yeah, 5
Yeah,
minutes.
ask us all the questions.
Opportunity to do that. So I want to say first, thank you to Matt Wong, Jasper, and Max for being here. I appreciate you guys taking some time out of your day to hang out with us and talk about a few things. You guys are all dear friends. I'm lucky to have you guys in my life, so I really appreciate it.
Love you, bro.
Feeling is
Yeah,
all
we love
mutual.
you too, bro.
Thank you,
All
bros.
mutual.
So
You too.
with that being said, let's kind of start and dig in to see what kind of questions we have. Rando Tomatoes asking, question for the stream peeps, how difficult is it to find an audience for the VGM kind of stuff? I guess I'll kind of start off with this. It's interesting for me, Random Tomato, coming from my kind of spot or my incoming or introduction to video game music. I didn't really know there was a whole scene / audience in general. It didn't come across my ways when I first realized it. For me, the biggest thing was that the Soul Bros, again, they were a very fun and interesting band that I loved just their music. I just loved what they were doing, and it was coincidence that they were nostalgic tunes that I recognized. So they had a huge audience because they've been doing it for years at this point. They've been a group for, I want to say, at least 6 or 7 years, if I recall correctly. I'd have to check their bio. But they've been doing it since 2013, 2014 or something. I could be wrong. So there's definitely an audience for video game music along those lines. How hard difficult is to find it? I think you have to market yourself in the correct way to find that demand, because there's clearly a demand out there that exists. It's just dependent on how well and how strategic you are about marketing yourself. So, but that's the tip of the iceberg that I know. I think some of the guys here may have a little bit more better idea than me. I could be wrong.
I want to hear Max because Max probably has more experience.
What? No,
Finding an
I
audience for
mean,
VGM.
I mean, it's clearly very hard, but people have done it, which is what inspires me and which it is what keeps me going. I mean, just look at it this way. Who's the biggest on the internet right now? I don't know, maybe Carlos as far as views, and like he's not like, doing a million views on every video. I mean, the market is still niche at the end of the day.
Oh yeah,
Because
it's
pretty much
super
everything
niche.
else has, a cap of at least 1 million views. If you think of any niche, plant videos, cooking videos, freaking gardening, blah blah blah, this and that. The highest, the best of the
No.
best.
Speaking
those-
of Carlos,
Speaking of Carlos, what's up, dude?
what's
Yo,
up, my dude?
Andre?
Oh
What's
my
up?
god.
So here you go. Exactly. So
Good.
I
Perfect
think Carlos will
timing.
agree with me here wholeheartedly. So like, yeah, the video game music thing is still very niche. Even Carlos, like he'll tell you. I don't think he'll disagree with me here. I mean, and he's probably the best one doing it, as I just stated, right now on YouTube at least. But then there are cats like that I like to think about, like Tommy Tallarico, who, if you guys don't know, he runs this thing called Video Games Live, and they've done a couple of world tours in the past.
Yeah.
And
They have
that's
some
like that's
live
money
albums,
stuff.
too.
Like we're talking about like, selling out arenas. So, as far as how easy it is to get an audience for that type of thing, I would say it's not easy at all. But I would say that it has been done before, and that's kind of what inspires me to continue to try and do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know what else to say about that.
I
But as
guess you
far
could.
as an
I guess
I
you
mean,
could say as well. It's like, okay, the 8-bit big band is another big ticket group that
Yeah,
is
they
like
got
really.
that.
I think they're really hitting some milestones. Of course, we all know and appreciate them. I know Charlie. I've met a ton of the musicians from the band, and
Charlie,
they.
of course,
Yeah,
him.
he alone. I think I argue that besides some of my other fellow friends that work hard on the internet and are self entrepreneurs, Charlie, I believe, is one of the hardest working guys on New York City.
Yeah.
I could be
Yeah.
wrong, but for some reason,
No,
of
he is.
a guy that works on Broadway, that does 10 million projects and writing jingles on his free time, and then also on top of that, leading a huge pops orchestra style band for video game music, is a big leading force. And I don't think I think between him, VGM, like Max, you, VGMCollective, Insane in the Rain, Pat with J Music Ensemble, those four groups just in off of my knowledge alone is already enough. The Soul Bros too. I keep forgetting, but I keep bringing them up because
Well,
you know.
yeah,
Soul
in
Bros
those-
and Insane in the Rain have been in it for significantly longer than any of us. I
Totally.
just want to say that for the record.
I also think that you have to think about like what Dom was saying at the initial question, like thinking about how to market it correctly. Like you don't necessarily like for me, like 90% of the stuff I do is not billed as VGM. You know what I'm saying? But 90% of the concerts that I do and things I do involve some VGM, right? So like I think part of the strategy too is to build the audience, and these audiences are growing too. You know, like Carlos and 8-Bit Big Band and like other like the Soul Bros, like they're creating a community of people that aren't necessarily like going into it as VGM fans. They're music fans that end up becoming VGM fans. So it's like it's part of the responsibility is on the people marketing it to create the audience also. So
Right.
Yo, I hate to interrupt. Can we just give like a quick shout out to Philip J. Fry, who's been gifting subs like crazy in the
Yeah.
channel? Just just gave insane.
Yeah.
Philip,
I
thank
mean,
you, man, for all
Yeah,
the
Philip.
support. He's gifted
Dude.
like 26 subs total now. Thank you for gifting those
I
2
know,
subs
holy
to
crap.
JT
Yeah.
Donathan, one of my colleagues, and Insane in the Rain. Which of course
Heck yeah.
got to give a shout out to Carlos, good friend here, and also incredible musician. If you guys don't know of him, please go give him a follow. He's awesome. He's breaking the VGM barriers on YouTube and all the internets and all that sort of stuff. Do you have anything you want to say, Matt, or do you want me to go to another question from Discord?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really the best expert, but I will say, I mean, it's just like whatever. I guess we are the people that are doing it, so it's whatever we make of it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's such a new thing because we're kind of the first generation to really be influenced. Have our child's influenced by that music in a certain way. So I think our audience is just now growing up. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
and it's just gonna be, we can't look to the audiences that we traditionally, view as like target audiences. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
it's just an entirely different market. That's just like an outside view of what,
Also-
what it seems like.
It's so much. Also, it's so much about community. I feel like
Yeah,
I don't wanna,
exactly.
I don't over talk, but it's just like all of you guys watching this chat right now are equally as instrumental
Yeah.
in
Agreed.
I was thinking
making
same
the
thing.
community
Exact same thing.
and doing like helping that like I don't know if Tomato you're still in the stream. Hopefully you are because it's your question, but like you guys asking these questions, you guys like being here and like supporting us is literally the reason why we can do this, and it's why you and other people younger than all of us will be able to do this too.
This is why I say thank you every single stream, man. It's like I don't know how many people realize of an opportunity that this is really for all of us to be in this room or on this stream on the internet at this moment in time together. This won't happen again unless I have you all again. But we might be talking about something completely different along those lines. So it's fascinating to me along those lines. So let's get with.
I think well, I don't know. I would just say the last thing is like anyone watching, like if you have friends that are into this, like tell them about it because like
Definitely.
I don't know. I think it's definitely. I mean, we're all trying to do more with it, and especially now that we're all kind of we have to sit in our own rooms and like do our shit. Sorry.
Yeah.
How dare you?
Can somebody ban Matt Wong from the stream, please? I'm
Big
kidding.
X. No,
Max already got
it's
banned.
like that emoji.
I was
I'm sorry.
No, you're
guys.
good. You're good.
Um,
Watch your dang
yeah,
language.
you got that. It was make a point.
You make the
Follow-
point.
tell
No,
your friends.
I respect that. I respect that.
Yeah.
Let's get another question then. Shango's asking, if there was a video game franchise that y'all would want to perform for, which would you choose? This is fascinating for me because, like, I guess from all the video games that I've played, I mean, my easy answer is Mario Kart. So I guess in the sense, Nintendo would be, the franchise with regards to playing something with a Japanese fusion band, playing Mario Kart music. But I also I've also always loved a lot of the Halo music too. So doing something with Bungie, but I know Bungie's not really a thing anymore. I don't remember who the franchise is for Halo still, whether if it's Bungie still exists or it doesn't exist. But those are the two that come off to my mind. I'm just open for the idea of writing music for a video game. You know what? That'd be a dream. But that's me.
I mean, obviously there's so many answers, but for me, it'd probably have to be Sonic the Hedgehog, hands down.
Classic.
Anything from that. The question was what franchise, right?
Yeah. What franchise would you like to perform for?
All things considered, Sonic the Hedgehog, no question.
I mean, you're wearing a dang Sonic hat. Are you sure you really like Sonic, Max? Something is telling me off that like you're not as true to as you seem.
I mean, dude, in all honesty, Sonic games in the past like 10 or potentially more years have just been so horrifying, and just like they pretty much took that IP and stabbed it to death and ripped its head off. If I'm being, that's just. As far as Sonic, when I grew up with it and like what I believe it has potential to be, I'm just a fan of like the IP in general. And like
Right.
the music never sucks. Let's be real. Just as far as the games, it's been a bit rough for the past 10 plus years. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I feel that. Totes feel
But
that.
no, dude, I love Sonic as much as I possibly can, as much as as much as I can. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
who's next? Or next? Would you want to? Did everyone answer, or do you want to go?
I'd want to write for Animal Crossing.
Woo!
Animal Crossing.
Yeah, any of you guys see?
Honestly,
I would love
watching all your streams, Max, have like got me like, dang, like this is a vibe. Like it's all a vibe. Like I would
Kazumi
love to create
Totaka.
vibes.
Kazumi Totaka, huge shout out. He's behind
Yeah.
all Animal Crossing
Super
music.
appealing.
He is literally the inspiration behind KK Slider, the character himself.
Yeah.
He is
Yeah.
literally KK Slider.
Have
He's
any of you guys?
responsible-
I bet you guys already saw it already. Did you see the Facebook video where they actually had all of the cats for the original recording of the new Animal Crossing Horizons? They did a video for like the intro. Like,
Oh, yeah.
that is.
Wow.
It was amazing. I saw it like 5 times.
If you,
I saw it advertised. I didn't watch it.
it's
Eric
killing.
Miyashiro.
It sounds
just-
exactly like what is going down along those
Yeah,
lines.
we're getting rated.
We're
by the
getting
way.
Yo, Poco. Thank you so much for the raid, friendos. Welcome, everybody. My name's Dom Palombi. I play drums and music here on Twitch. We are doing a DomCast. And this is our first episode of our series. I've been booped. Apparently, we've all been booped. This is our first episode series of my DomCast. So where I'm interviewing friends, but we're also answering your guys' questions based off of music, drums talk, stream talk, video games talk, kind of whatever talk. We're just talking and having a good time. Most of you guys know I do Drum Talk Tuesdays here on Twitch, but we have some special guests joining me. Mr. Matt Wong on my left, your right. On the bottom right-hand corner, Mr. Max Boyko of VGMCollective, and beneath me, Mr. Jasper Dutz of ChampionShogo. They're all new streamers here on Twitch, so I would also say give them all follows if you guys can. They do their own stuff on Twitch, and they're getting their starts.
Yeah.
Thank you, Poco, for that raid. I really, really appreciate it. Shall we get to another question, or did you guys have any more thoughts on that?
I guess I have to answer the question too, but
So yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
um,
You don't have to if you don't want to.
no, I don't have a problem answering it. I mean, the obvious answer is what Star Party said in the chat. I mean, obviously Pokemon is pretty much like everything for me, completely and otherwise. But also, I kind of would like to compose music for a video game franchise that I feel needs better music, and I don't think Pokemon needs better music. So I don't know. It would probably be like I don't know, something like Call of Duty or like some other non-JRPG, non-Japanese video game franchise.
I was thinking about Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, that could use better music for sure. Odyssey was that was the most recent one.
But like through all the different eras, you could write in a lot of different styles.
So much wasted possibility so far.
Like different cultures, like
Yeah. So I guess that would be my answer. But what I would really love to do is be a part of a franchise that has yet to exist, because then you really get to leave your footprint as a composer in the future of the franchise. Anyway, that's my.
That is true. Probably a basic one from Blazin. What's y'all's inspiration when y'all first starting out as musicians, and current inspirations now, along those lines? His mic's a little low. I'll bring up Matt a little bit.
I turned down a little bit just to try and cut out a little background. Unless you guys want all the background.
No, I can also turn you up on my end, so you're good.
Oh, okay, cool.
Is someone shedding in your apartment?
Oh yeah, both of my roommates
Somebody's
at the same
shedding.
time.
Somebody's.
Perfect.
It's cool. The counterpoint is really fun to listen to when I walk down the hallway.
Yeah.
I'm
Sure.
not
wasn't
even
trying-
kidding. Like,
I wasn't trying to blast AC, Carlos.
Yeah.
I was just saying that I felt like the music on.
When he's-
Odyssey was a little bit
No.
like
Matt Wong is the culprit for the blasting, I think. Anyway, let's
No,
move
I
on.
wasn't.
No,
I
his AC
I've
means
never even
Assassin's Creed. Dude.
I've never played Assassin's Creed.
Assassin's
I just
Creed.
thought of it as a
Assassin's
fun
Creed,
thing,
Animal
you know?
Crossing,
I-
air
I-
conditioning.
There was no comment on the music, but I assumed make a anyway.
Next question, please.
Anyway, yeah, the question.
So main inspiration on what you guys got into music and current inspirations now. I told this to friends before, but for me, it was actually because of my sisters. A lot of people don't know I'm a triplet. I actually have 2 twin sisters. They're
I
identical.
watched that stream.
They're identical, and we're all triplets. But I'm the fraternal twin out of the 3 of us, and they both started to get into music at an early age before I did, before any of us. So to keep long story short, it was pretty much my sister Michelle started piano lessons, which inspired my sister Gina to try guitar lessons, and then I wanted to take piano lessons at the time at a local school, but they had no room for any students along those lines. So I heard drums in the background, and the other inspiration for it was I wanted to try to be a person on one of those drum lines for the Macy's Day Parade that always happened on Thanksgiving and stuff like that. So a local band at home, as Cherry's saying, you could technically say. So all 3 of us did some musical acts together growing through grade school, but I was the one out of the 3 of us that decided to take it seriously. Not growing up in a musical family, my mom's dad actually used to sing in a barbershop quartet too. And I have small little mementos of a tie clip and I forget the cufflinks with music notes on them.
Nice.
That
that's cool.
I have his memories because he was like also a big inspiration. So it's been very fun and interesting for me to kind of go through that phase, and I try to still be inspired every day. It's to be inspired, I think, is always a tricky challenge, but we can talk about that another time.
Yeah.
So, inspirations, y'all?
I'll be quick. I think, I did grow up in a musical family. My dad's a professional musician. My mom's an artist, singer, painter, but sings too. So I didn't really ever think, I never really in my head made the choice to become a musician. It wasn't something that I was like, oh, I'm gonna do this. It was more just like, oh, this is something that I already do for as long as I remember, and it just ended up being like, oh, I can monetize what I can do, which is cool. So I don't have like an exciting inspiration story there, but I will say some of the earliest musical inspirations that I had were I was super into a little bit embarrassing, but I was really into like Linkin Park and Weezer as a kid. But I was also really into like Mozart and Debussy. Those were like probably the first four artists that I was really into. And then what got me into jazz was basically my high school just had a superior jazz program to any other instrumental music program, and I just wanted to be a part of that. And it was really the community. And I would say Oliver Nelson's Blues and the Abstract Truth is my number 1 album of all time. If I had to only listen to one album for the rest of my life, without question, without batting an eyelash, would be Oliver Nelson's Blues and the Abstract Truth. And then the second very distant place, like second place picks, would be Chet Baker and Jerry Mulligan, Chordless Quartet, and Bjork. Any of Bjork's albums before like 2000.
If I recall correctly, the first actual jazz album I listened to was The Very Best of John Coltrane. If I recall
Also
correctly,
classic.
it was just super classic. And then I instantly got into Buddy Rich, so it was one of Buddy Rich's albums that was like, what real. I remember. Fun fact: when I was really taking drum lessons back in the day, when I first got the Buddy Rich album, I actually remember when I was like 10 or 11 years old, I was dancing to one of Buddy Rich's album nonstop. I didn't understand any of it, but it was like some of the coolest drumming I ever heard when I was just getting into it. So it's funny you bring up inspirational albums because I think I need to do a refresher. Oh man, Max or Matt?
Yeah, I mean, similar to Jasper, like I also grew up in like a musical household. I mean, my mom and dad were both like, I mean, my dad's a full-time musician and my mom was like a singer at the time in a wedding band with him. And, so I just grew up in that environment. So that was like one of the first inspirations. Other than that, I mean, yeah, my dad would always play John Coltrane around the house growing up. So I would hear, I mean, I'll never forget Coltrane's sound that was always playing in my house. I have the album cover like in my head. And what other inspirations? I mean, it was mainly just getting into high school. So, well, I guess getting into middle school, I joined a ska band, and ska music had a huge shout out Ska Tune Network, big time.
Oh, Jeremy, man.
Jeremy knows because me and Jeremy actually grew up in like the same part of South Florida, and Jeremy actually saw my ska band play like way back in the day, and apparently that influenced Jeremy to like start doing what Ska Two Network, the whole thing. And yeah, so other than ska was like my first huge major introduction to the whole thing, and then after that I got into high school, and then just I was focused on jazz for 4 years nonstop. Yes, the ska ambassador, Carlos.
Jeremy's awesome, man. I just only met him at MagFest this past year, but the guy's such a sweetheart. I don't think I've ever met somebody so spirited about what he does individually, and I think that's an inspiration to note too.
That's the trombone guy, right?
Yeah, but he plays multiple.
Yes.
He plays multiple instruments too. So he plays,
Ah.
trumpet. He plays guitar. He plays bass. He
Awesome.
sings. Like the guy's almost like a one-man band, where
That's
he
awesome.
and he's just
Yeah.
putting out content all the time. Like I told him too. I was like, bro, you're a content machine. Just with how much stuff he's always putting about. But yeah, the ska ambassador. I think that's a great nickname for him. Along those lines,
Yeah.
man.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was the question, right? Pretty much, like, what inspired you? I mean, yeah, it was pretty much that trilogy of things. I mean, ska music got me hardcore into playing music. It got me into playing trumpet a lot, like developing some sort of chops. And then jazz, Freddie Hubbard, Lee Morgan, Clifford Brown, just being obsessed with those guys. And then, video game music. Boom. That's the Triforce for me.
The Triforce.
Mm-hmm.
That's killing.
Max and I played a lot. We've played a lot of Blake and music together.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Big time in Japan and otherwise.
A lot of messengers.
They love jazz messengers in Japan.
They do.
So I've heard.
We learned that the easy way.
So there's an easy way, huh?
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay. Matt, what about you?
So yeah, I would say I also grew up in what I guess it was a musical household. My parents both played instruments at like one point in their lives, but really, they weren't musicians. But actually, my mom worked in the music industry for like 20 years before I was born. She worked for a producer, not a Michael Walden. Actually, he produced he produced some of Whitney Houston's later hits, a lot of her. Anyways, so she kind of worked for him, and so she had a really diverse sort of not eclectic is more the word, eclectic sense, or eclectic, just musical ear. Like she just likes a lot of different. Like I listened to a lot of Led Zeppelin like early on, like the Foo Fighters. So like a lot of like rock, and then also like a lot of like my dad really liked funk. So a lot of like Tower of Power and Earth, Wind and Fire and the Isley Brothers and Ohio Players and all of that. And that was like very much my music growing up. And I think eventually at one point when I was like maybe 4 or 5, I went to like this CD store that was just down the street from my house and bought the CD that was like the history of the blues. You know what I mean? It was like the blues starting all the way back at Robert Johnson, all the way through like the beginning of like Chicago blues, and it was just like a collection of all of that. And I was just like totally mesmerized by like just hearing these recordings from like what was almost 100 years ago. And it was for me, it was like very much about the connection of like the emotion that they were feeling, because I was like first learning about the whole institution of slavery and all of that at the time, and for me it was just this connection of like, wow, music really like reflects the you can really affect affect emotion in that way. I think that's hearing the blues is sort of what got me toward jazz, because I started really getting into the blues and like boogie woogie piano, so like Pete Johnson, Mead Lux Lewis, like those kinds of people. And that led me to some of Herbie Hancock's earlier stuff, like because it's all sort of coming from similar it's all coming from similar place, because jazz is very much rooted, and I think that sort of led me to just getting more into jazz. And I remember, I think the first jazz album that I listened to all the way through was Blue Train, because it said blue, because it had the word blues in it. I think I was probably like 6 or 7, and for me it was like kind of interesting, because it's like you can hear the blues in everything that they play. If all I always listen it was the blues and all this classic rock and other stuff that was coming from that music. So yeah, it was sort of that progression through Herbie Hancock. You know, obviously that got me to Miles Davis and Train and all of that, and then started going back to Bird. You know, discovered that all the cool stuff that I liked that they were playing that was really interesting. You know, was coming from bebop, and that led me back to Bird and Bud Powell. And I really wanted to sound like Bud Powell for when I was in middle school. That was like my goal, was to sound like Bud Powell. And then something in my ear clicked, and I started really liking Robert Glasper, like right after that. And that got me way to the other side. And then from Robert Glasper, that sort of I heard a lot of what he was doing, and there was a lot of really interesting elements he was playing. But the hippest stuff was like, I heard Brad Meldau, is sort of where all of that's coming from. That led me to Brad. And I don't know. Those are, I'm just sort of listing my chronology because those are like all the people that have influenced me as people. And then the entire time we're thinking about composers, and I started working actually for Claire Fisher's son, Brent Fisher, doing just different arranging work and orchestration stuff, and so I got a lot of access to Claire's music, and that got me really, really deep into sort of the whole orchestral side of jazz, and that sort of is what led me to what I'm doing today. So it's kind of this whole progression where the music is sort of this tree, African American music in this country, it's this tree, and it has all these limbs, and it was sort of because I was primed to be, hearing all that funk and all that, sort of rock and all that stuff that sort of stemmed out from that I think it made me understand how blues is really I don't know. That's my story.
Hey man, you know what? You could still sound like Bud Powell if you really wanted to. That's for sure.
Sometimes I do.
We know
you never know.
We know you can. We know you can.
Oh, you know what happens. But yeah.
The sun rays.
All right. How about let's do one more question. I know some of you guys have to get rolling really soon. But boy, we've had a lot of good points. I feel like we're hitting a lot of interesting insights, especially, I'm getting to know you guys even more, of the way you guys think, the way you guys act, the way you guys talk about something. I'm learning a lot with regards to that. I hope chat's learning a little bit of something. I hope you guys are getting something out of today's stream, or this DomCast, along those lines. Let's see here. Well, I did answer Shango's. We did Random Tomatoes. I'll say, if anybody wants to ask one more question, throw a question in chat for the time being, or if you want to post it in Ask Dom Palombi on our Discord page, there's a section there.
Someone asked, who is a current artist you're awed by?
So I guess you're inspired by currently.
Yeah, someone alive now.
The thing is, I don't think there's just one. There's always going to be a list of guys that I'm.
We gotta pick one.
We gotta pick one. That's hard. The first guy, I have two guys that come to mind. I'm gonna say two because I believe in not just one. The drummer, they're two great drummers that are still living on this earth, Nate Smith and Mark Juliana. Those two guys alone are not only fantastic drummers, but they're fantastic musicians, because they have just such a well-rounded understanding on how the drums can speak on their own, and how they can fit for their specific roles. They are probably two of the most versatile players I think I know of. Of course, there's tons of guys out there, but those are the first two that come to my mind. So
I'm gonna say, honestly, like, maybe kind of like obvious, but probably John Williams. Just getting really deep into the Star Wars and Harry Potter soundtracks and all of his other stuff, and just his attentiveness to orchestration is something that's really moving to me. And because Dom said too, I'm gonna say my second one is gonna be Alan Menken, who basically wrote all of the Disney songs you've heard from Little Mermaid all the way till present day. He wrote Beauty and the Beast, he did Pocahontas, he did Hercules, he did Hunchback of Notre Dame. Every song from all of those movies was Alan Menken. And I've been getting really deep into his entire life story and his songwriting journey and stuff like that. It's really amazing. He's a truly amazing songwriter.
That's killing.
Yeah.
You're thinking hard, Matt.
Yeah. Oh, honestly, I mean, he's still current. Stevie Wonder.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm in awe of his career.
Does that count?
Well,
Though?
it's Steve.
Yes.
That counts,
Yes.
dude.
Oh yeah, that
Stevie
counts.
Just because he's alive, does that mean it's?
I mean,
current?
Stevie
Yeah,
Wonder or Quincy
of
Jones.
course.
One of those. Stevie Wonder or Quincy Jones, because I
Stevie-
see, I see them both as having the same effect on American culture and everything about how we
No,
hear
I
music.
agree. I was just wondering if Cherry, the way that, they asked the question, if they were referring to someone who's like hot right now. You know what I'm saying? Not
Oh.
Dude,
someone who's-
Stevie Wonder is still happening. Dude, Stevie Wonder is still relevant. Like, you know what I mean? That's what I think is the power of his music, is the fact that
insinuating that Stevie Wonder is not relevant.
Stevie Wonder
still
performed at
tours.
my
I was not
Stevie,
saying Stevie Wonder's not relevant. That's ridiculous. But I
Stevie
was just
Wonder
saying
performed at
question.
my
Someone that is
high school
still-
graduation, dude.
relative. Okay,
oh damn.
so
No.
I'm wrong if that's what you meant.
I think Stevie Wonder is just as relative as any artist that is out there, really. Even some deep cut people that you never heard of before.
Well, yeah, it was up to
Yeah.
the person who asked the question, and they have clarified. So God bless. I'm wrong. It counts, 100%. No need to argue. No, I'm serious.
Oh,
all
current.
good.
Maybe someone that's still relative. Relative?
Relevant, maybe.
Oh, relevant,
it means
okay.
relevant.
Oh, I
Okay,
interpret it.
relevant.
Anyway,
Max, you're the last one.
before I get tirade,
Ah,
I was gonna say just Max Colburn, honestly, and he's a younger dude, a little
Oh,
bit
he's
older than
killing.
me, but he's just probably my. I mean, the original question is a current artist you're awed by, and that is just the first person that comes to mind. Because every time I hear something that Maxo produces and creates, I am simply in awe at just how
Yep.
incredible,
oh yeah, dude, Max
informed.
is ridiculous.
how incredibly informed like all his music
Yep.
is, and how just it's just so profound. I can't really even put it into words, but he's clearly like he clearly understands video game music on a level that just any of the greatest video game music composers do, in my opinion.
Yeah, I remember you showing me some of his stuff when we
Yeah.
were driving back from MagFest, and that indeed is that his stuff is. Can you type his name in the chat for people, Max, just so people can check him out?
Max.
But I'll try. My iPad died, so I'm kind of
You're kind of
like at the point at this
it's no
moment.
problem.
Wait, can I actually change my answer? I actually
Sure.
just thought of who I meant
Sure.
to say. Um,
No changes. What?
Otis McDonald.
Oh, I know that's true though. Matt always shows me Otis McDonald.
Yeah, I'm always trying to turn people onto him, but he's super killing.
Yeah.
I haven't checked
Yeah,
out
I mean,
much
his,
of
yeah, his,
Otis.
you've heard his music before though, for sure.
Oh,
because his whole thing is he makes royalty free music, copyright free or royalty free music. Basically, content creators can use it on YouTube for for no money, and so his music has been viewed like over billions of times just because of how many videos it's in.
This is
But he's really cool because he.
Maxo.
Oh yeah, dude, do it.
Okay, cool.
That's Maxo's Max Colburn's SoundCloud. I just posted it in the chat. So.
Oh, killing. Nice.
Awesome.
Wait, can I post Otis's too?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I do. Yes, go ahead.
Killing.
But yeah, he's really cool. He's an amazing singer, and he plays all the instruments himself. He's like one of those people, and it's very much in the soul. He kind of combines a lot of different sort of soul funk genres together into his own really unique sound. He's super killing. And you can use his music for free, like in your videos. Like that's why I played it in my stream so much.
That's
like
killing.
I know there's no copyright issue with it.
Yeah.
It's the same with Erling, Dom, that guy that you showed.
Oh,
me,
his copyright
his stuff-
copyright
Oh,
free
yeah.
too.
At least the EP that we've checked out a lot together is
Maybe that's what I should open up requests with. I should probably play that just for good sake. Oh, hey, great questions, everybody. Thank you for submitting questions. I'll be taking more questions on Discord. So if you guys have any questions about things we talked about or things that you haven't had answered, feel free to join our Discord page and go to Ask Dom Palombi. You can ask something there or post something in general if you need something immediately answered. Gents, any final thoughts from today's live stream. It's been a joy to talk to you guys, and I just am curious to see if you guys have anything you'd like to say before we wrap up for our first ever DomCast.
Just ask us stuff whenever, we're on Discord.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
they all do streams, so make sure you guys are all following these guys. Jasper, how long have you been streaming now for? Just remind me.
Honestly, so I have been sporadically streaming for like a year or so, but like I pretty much only started making it a regular thing pretty much when Max started doing it. Like a few weeks ago was the first time I had like a stream schedule. I'm still trying to figure out, what I want my regular programming to be, and
Sure.
there's a lot of stuff that I have to. I have a theme in progress being made right now, like an overlay stream theme. So that's gonna be cool. My mom's doing the art; she's a professional artist, so it's gonna be very like cool. But I'm still trying to refine my aesthetic now.
Super killing.
Yeah.
I know Matt and Max have just started recently.
Yeah.
Fun fact, I'm mods for all of these guys' channels. So they
yeah, Dom the mod.
Yeah.
I have like a bunch of green swords, so y'all better watch out whenever I'm hanging out in chat.
I mean, dude, you can't spell mod without Dom, dude. It's mod
Ah!
backwards. So.
Ah!
Oh my god.
And on that note, seriously, chat, thank
Yeah,
you
I'm
guys.
about to start. I'm probably gonna stream like right now, actually.
Yeah,
I have a ton
Tearless
of work to do.
Tuesday.
Well,
Same,
if
same,
anybody,
same.
so what we're going to be doing, chat, for the next 2 hours, I'm going to be taking requests. So I'm not going to finish. We're not going to we're not going to stop streaming at the moment.
For sure,
so
yeah.
we'll be opening up my request queue. But I do want to say thank you again to my guests, AlltheWongNotes, ChampionShogo, and VGMCollective for joining me today on our first episode of our DomCast series. I think it'll be a fun time to bring these guys back again and talk about some more stuff
Yeah.
and get in the real
We'd love to.
nitty-gritty about all this music video game stuff and stream stuff. So please follow all
Yeah.
these gentlemen if you haven't done so already on their streams. I know Jasper's streaming at 6 p.m. Today. Max, when's your next upcoming stream you have?
2 p.m.
Tomorrow?
No, is it? Let me check.
You missed it, dude. 2 p.m. was 3 hours ago.
No, tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Hold on, folks at home. Okay, so no, the next time I'm streaming is Friday. I got 2 days off, baby.
So he's streaming Friday, and then
Discord.
Matt, have you figured out a schedule yet, or are you just kind of winging it?
For now, I'm just going every night. Just because I have a lot of work to do. Actually, I have a lot of work that is stream worthy. It'd be fun to do. So
Sounds
yeah,
good.
just every night, probably until extremely late. That's kind of been my vibe recently.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
no.
mean,
Eventually, once I get a yeah, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say I'm in some 4 a.m. Matt Wong streams.
Oh. Yeah, it was a vibe. It's a vibe. Come join me any hour. But no, eventually, once I get my Discord up and running a little bit more, because I'm gonna have a whole Discord that I want to be like a place that people can come just to talk about jazz composition stuff, or if like you have just sheet music that you want to be posted, or get a second pair of eyes over. Like I have all these channels set up. I'm working on it, so that'll be coming. But once I start doing that, then I'll have more scheduled stuff when there's a little bit more of like a thing. But for now, I'm just trying to work out the technical glitches, just get used to the whole thing, like shedding,
Heck yeah.
the arranging shed.
Awesome. I will also just say a big thank you to anybody from any of these guys' communities for coming and hanging out on my stream today. We're not done. I'm going to be taking your guys' requests literally in a couple minutes. So stick around if you want to hear me play some drums and play some music. I stream 5 days a week currently. So if you like what you guys see for more DomCast and more drum requests episodes, hit that follow button and all that good stuff. And this is Dom Palombi, episode 1 of our DomCast series. Thank you guys for being here and watching, and we'll see y'all next time.
Thank you, Dom. We love you.
Thanks so much, Dom.
No problem,
Thanks so
guys.
much, chat.
Thanks. And
Thanks for being here. We'll see you guys
fun.
soon.
See you guys on the
We'll see ya.
internet.